Impact segment tonight. The nation's 5 living presidents gathered in Dallas, Texas yesterday for a dedication of the George W. Bush Presidential Center. Men all had praise for President Bush the Younger, and the gathering looked to be kind of a pep rally, at least on the surface. But what was going on behind the scenes? Joining us now from Austin, Texas, Karl Rove, who was our spy on the premises. What was the most interesting thing you saw yesterday in Dallas and the dynamic among the 5?
Well, look, they are who they are, and there's a cordial relationship among all 5, but they are who they are. So I thought it was interesting. You saw the photograph of it behind the scenes before they went out on the stage. There was President Bush 41, President Bush 43, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama all having a nice conversation. And off to the side, sort of being pensive and looking away, was Jimmy Carter, who is, he made very gracious comments, surprisingly gracious, but he is he's a different kind of a cat, and he was sort of hanging off on there on the side, not really engaged with the others.
Is it because of his age, though? May it be because of his age and his hearing?
No,
could that be the reason?
No, I just think it's his nature. I just think he's not fit in with these guys. There is a very exclusive club here, and he's a member of it, but he is the least active and least engaged and least communal of the 5 former living presidents.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are gregarious. At Clinton, the 2 Bushes are gregarious. Barack Obama, I think, fakes being gregarious. I don't think he's a naturally gregarious guy. But you're right, Carter is very reserved. I don't know if it's a chip on his shoulder or not. I don't know him that well. But nobody did anything that was out of the ordinary, right? They all were dignified and respectful.
Yeah. No, look, they were all dignified and respectful, but it was out of the ordinary. Carter, who had been a critic of Bush's, gave very gracious comments. President Obama, who has heretofore not been able to bring himself to say much nice about his predecessor, even in the White House ceremony unveiling President Bush's official portrait, said very few things about the president. He gave a very expansive and very generous and very gracious set of comments. I also thought it was interesting at the private lunch that followed the event. President Obama threw out a line that was a great line, and I suspect it would have been better had he used it publicly. He said, I've learned a lot from my predecessor. Once you get into the job, you understand how difficult the job really is, and I've learned how difficult it is to throw out the ball at the first pitch of a game and how hard it is to ride a bike, and from my predecessor. And it was a note of humility and humor and graciousness that he probably would have been
I'm glad to hear
into
that.
his remarks.
I'm glad to hear that. All right, you heard the Barney Frank interview, and I wanted to get your opinion on why you think the president doesn't say the words Islamic Jihad. We now know that was the motivator for these 2 to go up there and kill an 8-year-old boy, 3 other Americans, and wound 200. But Barack Obama simply will not say it. He never has said it. I think he's going to have to say it. But why is he so reluctant to say those words?
Yeah. Well, first, a quick comment about Barney Frank. Yes, he made a provocatively political and unnecessary comment in the immediate afterwards of the Boston bombing, and he was wrong in his comments to suggest that it was morally equivalent to Dennis Miller's question about why the president couldn't say Islamic jihadism. Miller's comment was the event of the moment. Barney Frank's was a reach. Here we have a bombing in Boston, and he's saying this is, no tax cut would have prevented. That was a stretch. That was an ideological spasm, and it had nothing to do with the issue at home. And I would remind you, the Bush tax cuts were in place in their entirety through December 31st of last year, and only the top bracket has now been raised, and that's going to affect people's tax payments next year, not last year. So, the Bush tax cuts were in force when we had to deal with this crisis in Boston, and the Boston police and the federal government dealt with it. Now, as to why the president can't bring himself to say this, I've thought about this a lot, and I don't have a good answer. There are 2 possible answers. One is, this is all politics, and he's sitting there saying, I cannot say Islamic jihadism, I can't say war on terror, I can't say Islamic terrorism, because I'm the guy who ran for office by saying, I'm the peace guy, and I can end this, and if I have to admit it's continuing, it's not good for me politically. But the other one's even equally troubling, which is he's sitting there saying, I don't believe it is. I believe it's a criminal act. We had 2 criminals in Boston.
I hope it's not
who committed an act. But either one of those is not a good idea. Is not. No,
but the latter. would really be bad. I got to run, Mr. Rove. It's always good to see you. Thanks for being our eyes and ears down there yesterday.